Queen Zara stood on the crystal balcony of her palace, watching the twin moons of Nexarus rise above the capital city. Below her, millions of lights sparkled like stars across the massive cityscape. Ships moved between the floating towers, carrying goods and people across her empire. She ruled 12 star systems, commanded fleets that stretched across the galaxy, and her people had never lost a war. But tonight, she felt afraid. The communication device on her wrist buzzed. "Your Majesty," came the voice of General Crix, her most trusted military advisor. "The Corven Federation has attacked another of our trade routes. 3 merchant ships destroyed, 200 civilians dead." Zara closed her eyes and took a deep breath. The Corvens had been testing her borders for months now. Small attacks, always in different places, always just enough to cause damage but not enough to justify a full war. They were like hungry wolves, circling and waiting for the right moment to strike. "Double the patrol ships on all trade routes," she ordered. "And call a meeting of the High Council for tomorrow morning." "Yes, Your Majesty." Zara turned away from the balcony and walked back into her private chambers. The room was huge, with walls made of smooth blue stone that glowed softly in the darkness. Ancient weapons from her ancestors hung on the walls, reminders of the battles that built the Nexari Empire. Her people were warriors, bred for combat and conquest. They were tall, strong, with silver skin that could resist energy blasts and claws that could cut through metal. She looked at herself in the mirror. At 8 feet tall, she was considered average height for her species. Her silver skin had darker markings that showed her royal bloodline. Her eyes were deep purple, the color of Nexari nobility. She had ruled for 20 years, since her father died in battle against the Zephyrian raiders. In those 20 years, she had expanded the empire, brought peace to warring worlds, and made the Nexari the most respected species in this part of the galaxy. But the Corvens were different from any enemy they had faced before. The next morning, Zara walked into the High Council chamber. The room was circular, with seats arranged in levels going up toward the ceiling. 50 of her most important advisors sat waiting for her. Generals, diplomats, scientists, and noble house leaders all turned to look at her as she entered. "The Corven situation grows worse," she announced without ceremony. "They are not just raiding anymore. This is a planned campaign to weaken us before a major attack." General Crix stood up. He was old even by Nexari standards, his silver skin marked with scars from a dozen wars. "Your Majesty, we should strike first. Our fleet is stronger than theirs. One decisive battle and we can end this threat." "No," said Diplomat Vess, a thin female with elaborate markings on her arms. "A direct attack would unite the other federations against us. We need to find another way." The council erupted in arguments. Some wanted immediate war, others preferred to wait and see what the Corvens would do next. Zara listened but said nothing. She had already made her decision, but she knew the council would not like it. Finally, she raised her hand for silence. "There is a proposal I want to discuss. The Earth delegation has offered an alliance through marriage." The chamber fell completely silent. Zara could hear the hum of the air circulation system in the sudden quiet. "Marriage?" General Crix's voice was barely a whisper. "Your Majesty, surely you cannot be serious." "The humans are a new species," Zara continued. "They have no advanced technology, no great fleet, no special abilities. But they have something we might need. They have shown remarkable skill in diplomatic solutions." Lord Vex, leader of the merchant families, leaned forward. "With respect, Your Majesty, what could marriage to a human possibly achieve? They are weak, small, and their planet is barely past primitive space travel." "The marriage would formalize an alliance," Zara explained. "It would also send a message to the Corvens that we are confident enough to make new alliances instead of just preparing for war." "This is madness," muttered General Crix. "Marrying an alien species? And humans, of all creatures?" Zara felt her temper rise but kept her voice calm. The decision has been made. Ambassador Ben from Earth has agreed to the arrangement. The ceremony will take place in 1 month. She stood up and left the chamber before anyone could argue further. Behind her, she could hear the council exploding into heated debates. 3 weeks later, Zara met her future husband for the first time. Ben walked into the throne room escorted by 2 Nexari guards. He was so much smaller than she had expected. Humans were supposed to be around 6 feet tall, but he looked tiny compared to her 8-foot frame. His skin was a warm brown color and his hair was dark and curly. He wore a simple black suit that looked plain compared to the elaborate robes of the Nexari court. But his eyes caught her attention immediately. They were dark brown, almost black, and they seemed to take in everything around him without showing any fear or surprise. Most alien visitors to the throne room were intimidated by the massive space, the ancient weapons on the walls, and the presence of the Nexari queen. Ben just looked curious. "Your Majesty," he said with a small bow. His voice was quiet but clear. "Thank you for agreeing to this arrangement." "Ambassador Ben," Zara replied. "Welcome to Nexaris." Over the following days, Ben was given tours of the palace and the capital city. Zara watched him carefully, trying to understand what kind of person he was. He asked questions about everything but not in the way most visitors did. He wanted to know how their government worked, how their military was organized, how their people made decisions. He spent hours in the royal library, reading about Nexari history and culture. The court nobles watched him too, but with growing confusion and disappointment. "He does not even try to learn our combat techniques," complained Sir Vorth during a dinner gathering. "I offered to teach him sword fighting and he politely declined. I invited him to the weapons testing facility," added Lady Nex. "He seemed more interested in how we manufacture the weapons than in their destructive power." "He is weak," declared General Crix bluntly. "I have seen children more impressive than this human." Zara found herself growing frustrated as well. She had expected Ben to at least try to fit into their warrior culture. Instead, he spent most of his time alone, studying their military reports and diplomatic records. He rarely spoke during formal dinners and showed no interest in the traditional Nexari competitions of strength and skill. A week before the wedding, new reports came in. The Corvens had attacked a mining station near the border of Nexari space. This time, they had not just destroyed the facility but had taken prisoners. Video messages showed Corven soldiers forcing captured Nexari workers to kneel while their commander spoke directly to a camera. "Queen Zara," the Corven commander said, his reptilian features twisted in a cruel smile. "Your empire grows weak. Soon we will take what should belong to the strong." The High Council demanded immediate action. General Crix requested permission to mobilize the entire fleet. The noble houses offered their private armies. Everyone wanted war. Zara called for Ben to join the emergency meeting. He entered the council chamber and took a seat near the back, saying nothing as the generals outlined their plans for massive military response. When they finished, Zara looked directly at him. "Ambassador Ben, do you have any thoughts on this situation?" The entire council turned to stare at the small human. Ben was quiet for a long moment, his dark eyes thoughtful. "Your Majesty," he said finally, "may I ask a question?" "Of course." "In all these attacks, how many Corven soldiers have you captured alive?" General Crix snorted. "None. They fight to the death or retreat completely." "Why does that matter?" "And how many Corven ships have you recovered intact?" "None," the general replied, sounding annoyed. "What is your point, human?" Ben looked around the room slowly. "You know very little about your enemy. Their technology, their command structure, their long-term goals. You are planning to fight a war against an opponent you do not understand." "We understand enough," Lord Vex interrupted. "They want our territory and our resources. What more do we need to know?" "Everything," Ben said simply. The council members looked at each other in confusion. Zara felt a strange sensation, like something important was happening that she could not quite grasp. "Explain," she commanded. Ben stood up. "Your Majesty, the Corvens are testing your responses. Each attack has been carefully planned to learn how you react, how quickly you deploy forces, what your standard defensive procedures are. They are gathering intelligence for something much larger than raids on merchant ships." "Impossible," General Crix declared. "Our intelligence network would have detected major military preparations." "Would it?" Ben asked. "How do you gather intelligence on the Corven Federation?" The general's silver skin darkened with embarrassment. "We monitor their communications and track their ship movements. And if they wanted to hide their true preparations while conducting fake communications and false ship movements." The chamber fell silent again. Zara leaned forward on her throne. "What are you suggesting, Ben?" "I am suggesting that you are being manipulated into responding exactly as they want you to respond. Every military action you take gives them more information about your capabilities and your thinking." "Then what would you do?" she asked. Ben smiled for the first time since arriving on Nexarus. It was a strange expression, not showing teeth like a Nexari smile, but somehow conveying confidence and warmth at the same time. "Your Majesty, I would do something they would never expect from a warrior species." "Which is?" "I would think like a human." Zara felt something shift inside her chest, a feeling she had never experienced before. For the first time since the Corven attacks began, she felt hopeful instead of afraid. But she had no idea what that hope might lead to. The royal wedding took place 3 days later, but it felt nothing like a celebration. Corven ships had been spotted near 2 more Nexari systems, and reports came in every hour of mysterious signals being transmitted from unknown sources. The ceremony was simple and quick, with only essential personnel present. Zara wore traditional silver armor instead of a wedding dress, and Ben wore his dark suit with a small Nexari honor badge on his chest. When the priest spoke the binding words in the ancient Nexari language, Zara looked down at her new husband and wondered if she had just made the biggest mistake of her reign. That night, as alarms blared across the capital, she got her answer. "Your Majesty," General Crix's voice crackled through the emergency communication system. "We have a problem. A big one." Zara and Ben rushed to the command center, a massive room filled with holographic displays showing every corner of Nexari space. Officers moved between control stations, coordinating with ships and monitoring stations across the Empire. The main display showed a 3-dimensional map of their territory, with red dots marking enemy contacts. There were far too many red dots. "Report," Zara commanded as she entered. General Crix pointed to the central display. "Massive Corven fleet movements, Your Majesty. Not raids this time. Full military formations. They are moving toward Vex Prime." Zara felt her blood turn cold. Vex Prime was their most important mining world, producing rare crystals that powered their entire fleet. Without it, the Nexari military would be crippled within months. "How many ships?" she asked. "Over 300 confirmed contacts," replied Commander Yax from her station. "Battleships, carriers, support vessels. This is their entire main fleet. And they are all heading for Vex Prime." "Yes, Your Majesty. They will reach the system in 18 hours. Zara turned to her husband. Ben stood quietly beside her, studying the tactical display with those dark eyes that seemed to see everything. "What do you think?" she asked him. "I think this is exactly what I expected," he replied. General Crix spun around to face Ben. "Expected? You expected them to attack our most valuable world with their entire fleet?" "Yes," Ben said calmly. "It is what I would do." The command center fell silent except for the soft hum of computers and the distant sound of ships launching from the military docks. "Explain yourself," Zara ordered. Ben walked over to the main display and gestured at the red dots moving toward Vex Prime. "Your Majesty, the Corvens have been studying your responses for months. They know that when Nexari territory is threatened, you respond with overwhelming force. You gather your entire fleet and meet the enemy head-on in decisive battle. Because it works, General Crix interrupted. We have never lost using this strategy. Because your previous enemies were honorable warriors who fought the same way you do, Ben replied. But the Corvens are not honorable warriors. They are conquerors who use any method that brings victory. Zara frowned. What are you saying? Ben touched a control panel and the display zoomed in on Vex Prime. They want you to bring your entire fleet to defend this world. They want you to commit everything you have to one battle in one place. Of course, said Commander Yax. Vex Prime is critical to our empire. We cannot let them take it. Can't you? Ben asked quietly. The question hit the command center like a physical blow. Several officers gasped. General Crix looked like he was about to attack the human diplomat. Are you suggesting we abandon Vex Prime? Zara's voice was dangerous. I am suggesting you think about why they really want you to defend it. Ben manipulated the display again, showing the entire Nexary Empire. Your Majesty, while your fleet is fighting at Vex Prime, where will the rest of your territory be? Zara stared at the map as understanding dawned. Undefended. Exactly. The attack on Vex Prime is not about taking one world. It is about forcing you to leave your other worlds vulnerable while you fight to defend the obvious target. But we cannot just give up our most important mining world, protested Lord Vex, who had arrived with other council members. You do not have to give it up, Ben said. You just have to let them think they are taking it. General Crix stepped closer to Ben, his claws extended slightly. Human, you are talking about surrender. Nexary do not surrender. I am talking about strategic thinking, Ben replied without backing away. Sometimes the strongest action looks like the weakest one. Zara studied the display, her mind racing. Everything Ben said made sense, but it went against every instinct her people had developed over thousands of years of warfare. What exactly are you proposing? She asked. Ben took a deep breath. Send a small defensive force to Vex Prime. Make it look like you are trying to hold the world but do not have enough ships. Let the Corvens think they are winning easily. Meanwhile, position your real fleet in hidden locations throughout your territory. Hidden how? Asked Commander Yax. Behind moons, inside asteroid fields, powered down to minimum signatures. When the Corvens reveal their true plan and attack your other worlds, you will be ready for them. This is insane, muttered General Crix. You want us to act weak when we are strong. I want you to act smart when your enemies expect you to be predictable, Ben corrected. Zara closed her eyes and tried to imagine how this could work. The idea terrified her. Everything about it went against Nexary military tradition. But something deep inside her told her that Ben was right. Show me the details, she said. For the next 4 hours, Ben worked with the command staff to develop what he called a strategic deception plan. He suggested specific hiding places for different parts of the fleet, communication protocols that would make their defensive preparations look chaotic and desperate, and timing sequences that would make the Corven victory at Vex Prime seem inevitable. General Crix argued against every detail, but even he had to admit that Ben's understanding of military logistics was impressive for someone from a supposedly primitive world. How do you know so much about fleet coordination? The general asked during one heated discussion. Humans have been fighting wars for thousands of years, Ben replied. We have learned that winning is more important than looking strong. As dawn approached over the capital city, Zara made her decision. We will implement the human plan, she announced. The command center erupted in protests from several officers, but Zara raised her hand for silence. General Crix, you will take 50 ships to Vex Prime and make the strongest possible defensive showing with what you have. Make the Corvens believe we are throwing everything into holding that world. Your Majesty, 50 ships cannot possibly hold against 300. They are not supposed to hold, Ben interjected. They are supposed to make the enemy believe you are trying to hold with insufficient forces because the rest of your fleet is scattered and disorganized. And where will the rest of our fleet actually be? asked Commander Yax. Ben brought up a new display showing the entire Empire with small blue dots scattered throughout. Hidden in these locations. Close enough to respond quickly when the real attacks begin, but invisible to long-range sensors. Zara studied the plan one more time. It was either brilliant or completely insane, and she would not know which until it was too late to change her mind. Do it, she ordered. The next 12 hours were the longest of Zara's life. She sat in the command center watching as General Crix's small fleet took defensive positions around Vex Prime, while the main Nexary battle groups moved to their hiding places throughout the Empire. On the long-range displays, the massive Corven fleet continued its approach toward their target. Ben sat beside her, occasionally offering quiet suggestions but mostly just watching the displays with those dark, thoughtful eyes. "Are you certain this will work?" she asked him during one particularly tense moment. "No," he replied honestly. "But I am certain that meeting them in conventional battle would definitely fail." 6 hours before the Corven fleet reached Vex Prime, something unexpected happened. "Your Majesty," reported Lieutenant Dex from her sensor station. "I am detecting new contacts throughout the Empire. Small groups of ships approaching our outer worlds." Zara felt her heart skip. "Show me." The display revealed exactly what Ben had predicted. While the main Corven fleet approached Vex Prime, smaller attack groups were moving toward a dozen other Nexary worlds. Mining colonies, trading stations, military supply depots, even some of the outer residential worlds. "They are everywhere," whispered Commander Yax. "No," said Ben with grim satisfaction. "They are exactly where we expected them to be." Zara turned to look at her husband with new respect. "You knew they would do this." "I knew they were too smart to put everything into one battle," he replied. "The attack on Vex Prime was always meant to distract you while they conquered the rest of your empire. But now we are ready for them." "Now we are ready for them," Ben agreed. As the Corven fleet reached Vex Prime and began their attack on General Crix's outnumbered defenders, reports started coming in from across the Empire. Corven attack groups were arriving at their targets, expecting to find defenseless worlds and minimal resistance. Instead, they found hidden Nexary battle groups waiting for them. "Contact at Mining Station 7, reported one officer. "Enemy force of 12 ships surprised by 36 of ours." "Trading Post 5 under attack," called another. 15 Corven ships engaged by hidden squadron. "Military Depot 3 reports enemy fleet destroyed. No Nexary casualties." Ben watched the reports with calm satisfaction, but Zara noticed something else in his expression. Something that looked almost predatory. "There is more to your plan," she realized. Ben nodded slowly. "Your Majesty, we have shown them that humans can think tactically. Now I want to show them what humans can do when we stop thinking like prey and start thinking like hunters." For the first time since meeting her new husband, Zara felt genuinely afraid of what he might be capable of. The battle reports kept flooding into the command center, but they were nothing like what anyone expected. Across 12 different star systems, Corven attack groups were being systematically destroyed by Nexary forces they never saw coming. But Ben was not satisfied with just winning the battles. "Commander Yax," he called from his position near the main display. "Are we recording everything?" "Recording, sir. Every battle, every communication, every moment of Corven confusion when they realize they have been outmaneuvered. I want it all documented." Zara watched her husband with growing fascination. "Why do you need recordings?" "Because winning the war is more important than winning individual battles," Ben replied. "And sometimes you win a war without firing a single shot." Before anyone could ask what he meant, alarms started blaring throughout the command center. "Your Majesty," Lieutenant Dex called out urgently. "Major development at Vex Prime. General Crix is requesting immediate assistance." The main display switched to show the battle around their mining world. General Crix's 50 ships were fighting desperately against the massive Corven fleet, but they were clearly losing. Several Nexary vessels were already destroyed, and the defensive lines were collapsing. "They are breaking through our defenses," reported the communications officer. "General Crix says they cannot hold much longer." Zara felt panic rising in her chest. "We have to send reinforcements." "No," Ben said firmly. "This is exactly what is supposed to happen." "Supposed to happen?" General Crix's voice crackled through the speakers from Vex Prime. "Ben, I do not know what you are planning, but we are about to lose this world completely." "Hold your position for exactly 12 more minutes," Ben replied calmly. "Then begin a fighting retreat toward the asteroid belt." 12 minutes? Why 12 minutes? "Because that is when the Corven commander will make his fatal mistake." Zara stared at Ben in amazement. He was tracking dozens of battles across the Empire while coordinating precise timing that somehow depended on the psychology of enemy commanders he had never met. "How can you possibly know what their commander will do?" "Because he is not fighting Nexuri anymore," Ben explained. "He is fighting humans. And humans have been fighting impossible wars for so long that we have learned to think like our enemies better than they think like themselves." 10 minutes later, long-range sensors detected exactly what Ben predicted. The Corven commander at Vex Prime, convinced that victory was within reach, ordered his reserve ships to abandon their positions and join the final assault on the mining world. "There," Ben pointed to the display. "He just emptied his supply lines to crush your last desperate defense. Now he has committed everything to taking one world, and his fleet is spread out in attack formation instead of defensive positions. So now we spring the real trap." Ben activated a communication channel that connected to hidden Nexuri forces throughout the Empire. "All units, this is Ambassador Ben. Execute Hunter Protocol." Zara had never heard of Hunter Protocol, but apparently her fleet commanders had been briefed while she was sleeping. From concealed positions near Vex Prime, 3 full battle groups suddenly appeared on sensors. The Corven fleet, spread out in attack formation and focused entirely on the mining world, found themselves surrounded by fresh Nexuri forces attacking from every direction. But that was just the beginning. "Phase 2, Ben announced. Across the Empire, the scattered Corven attack groups that had been defeated in earlier battles were not just destroyed, they were captured. Nexuri forces had used new tactics that Ben had taught them, disabling enemy ships instead of destroying them and taking prisoners instead of leaving no survivors. "Your Majesty," Commander Yax reported with amazement in her voice, "we are receiving surrender signals from Corven forces in 7 different systems. They are requesting terms." "Surrender?" Zara could barely believe what she was hearing. "Corvens never surrender. They do when they realize they have been completely outmaneuvered," Ben said quietly. "And when they discover that their opponents are willing to show mercy to those who surrender." Ben walked over to the communications station and activated an Empire-wide broadcast channel. When he spoke, his voice was transmitted not only to Nexuri forces, but to every Corven ship still fighting throughout their territory. "Attention Corven Federation forces," he said in accented but clear Corven language. "This is Ambassador Ben of Earth, speaking for the Nexuri Empire. Your main fleet at Vex Prime is surrounded and will be destroyed within 1 hour. Your attack groups throughout Nexuri space have been defeated. Your supply lines have been cut. You have 2 choices." The entire command center listened in stunned silence. "First choice, continue fighting and be destroyed completely, leaving your families and your worlds defenseless against other enemies. Second choice, surrender now and be treated with honor according to Galactic law. Your wounded will be healed, your prisoners will be fed and sheltered, and your surviving ships will be allowed to return home with a message." Zara grabbed Ben's arm. "What message?" she whispered. Ben looked at her with those dark eyes that no longer seemed quiet or peaceful. "The message that humanity has joined this part of the galaxy, and that anyone who threatens our allies will face the consequences." Over the next hour, something unprecedented happened. Corven commanders throughout Nexuri space began surrendering their forces. Not all of them, some chose to fight to the death as their culture demanded. But enough surrendered that the Corven Federation's military power was effectively broken. But Ben still was not finished. Phase 3, he announced. Ben activated another communication system, this one connecting to governments throughout the local galactic region. The Zephyrian Confederacy, the Altarian Republic, the Free Worlds Alliance, and a dozen smaller powers suddenly received the same message. Leaders of the Free Galaxy, Ben began, this is Ambassador Ben of Earth, speaking as consort to Queen Zara of the Nexari Empire. Today we have demonstrated that aggressive expansion by the Corven Federation has ended permanently. But we offer something more than just military victory. Zara watched in fascination as Ben switched between languages, speaking to each government in their own tongue and addressing their specific concerns and fears. We propose a new alliance. Not an empire ruled by one species, but a confederation of free worlds united in mutual defense and trade. Humans call this concept collective security. When one member is attacked, all members respond. When one member needs assistance, all members contribute. The responses started coming in immediately. Some governments were suspicious, others interested, but all of them were paying attention. News of the Nexari victory over the Corvens had spread quickly, and everyone wanted to know how such a complete triumph had been achieved. Ben spent the next 6 hours in direct communication with a dozen different species, negotiating preliminary agreements, addressing concerns, and building something that Zara slowly realized was far larger than just ending one war. You are creating a new galactic order, she said during a brief pause in the negotiations. Humans learned long ago that winning a war means nothing if you do not secure the peace that follows, Ben replied. The Corvens were dangerous because other species were too afraid to unite against them. Remove the fear, provide the unity, and aggressors like the Corvens become irrelevant. By the end of the day, preliminary agreements were in place for what would become known as the Galactic Defense Confederation. 12 species committed to mutual defense pacts, trade agreements, and shared technology development. The Nexari Empire, from being an isolated warrior culture, suddenly found itself at the center of the largest alliance in galactic history. But the most important change was in Zara herself. That evening, as reports continued to arrive of Corven forces surrendering and requesting to join the new confederation rather than return to their defeated federation, Zara found Ben alone on the crystal balcony where she had stood worrying just days before. I underestimated you, she said simply. Ben turned to look at her, and she saw something in his expression that she had never noticed before. Not just intelligence, but a deep understanding of how power actually worked in a universe full of different species with different strengths and different fears. Your people underestimated humans, he replied. You thought strength meant physical power and military might. But humans learned to survive on a world where we were not the strongest, or the fastest, or the most dangerous creatures. We learned that real strength comes from understanding others well enough to help them become more than they thought possible. Zara moved to stand beside him, looking out over her capital city. The Council will never question my decisions again. The Council will never need to question your decisions again, Ben corrected. Because now you have advisors who think differently than you do. Your strength combined with human adaptability makes problems into opportunities. Is that what this marriage is to you? An opportunity? Ben was quiet for a long moment. This marriage is the beginning of something neither of our species could achieve alone. Nexari honor and human creativity. Your courage and our flexibility. Your empire and our alliance building. Zara felt something she had never experienced before, the sense that she was part of something larger and more important than just ruling her people. What happens next? Next, we build the future, Ben said with that strange human smile. Together. 3 months later, the first Galactic Defense Confederation Summit took place on Nexaris. Representatives from 23 species gathered to sign the formal alliance documents. Earth sent a delegation of 50 humans, all of them quiet, thoughtful people like Ben who seemed unremarkable until they started solving problems that had puzzled others for generations. The Corven Federation formally requested membership in the Confederation, agreeing to democratic reforms and territorial limitations in exchange for protection from external threats and access to new technologies. Queen Zara opened the summit with a speech that was broadcast across the galaxy. 1 year ago, my empire stood alone, facing enemies who seemed too powerful to defeat. Today, we stand together with allies we never could have imagined, having discovered that cooperation is stronger than conquest, understanding more powerful than intimidation, and diversity more valuable than uniformity. She paused and looked directly at Ben, who stood with the Earth delegation. We have learned that sometimes the greatest power comes in the smallest packages, and that the future belongs not to those who can destroy their enemies, but to those who can transform their enemies into friends. As applause echoed through the great hall, Zara realized that her marriage to a quiet human ambassador had not just saved her empire. It had changed the galaxy forever.